Hey folks, as promised, I'm back to do some door panels for the inside of this truck. Now last week we pretty much wrapped up the exterior on the truck by getting the bedsides installed, some extra support tubes, taillight lenses, little crap like that. So the outside is getting pretty close to being done. The inside, I need to get some inner door panels in these doors here where I've cut out all of this area of the door. Now, it wasn't necessarily to lighten up the truck. I mean, the thing weighs 8,500 pounds. It was 8,500 pounds before I put the body back on it. So this thing's gonna be close to 9,000, 9,500 pounds. A couple of pounds of tin in the door isn't gonna make a difference. Really, the biggest reason I cut it out is because one, it's easier to do stuff like put one-piece windows in it and not have to, wrestle it in a certain way to get it in and out of the door. Two, I don't need all of that, stamp pressed into shape panel in there. What I did do is when I cut them out, I left a slight flange around where this door is stamped in a recess for the factory door panel. Now leaving that flange leaves me a place to bolt my new panels in place. Now long before I got to this step in the process, I had already decided that this is gonna have aluminum door panels in the truck. And basically what I'm gonna do is just try and carry some of the accents from the exterior of the truck into the interior, along with match some of the interior that's already in there. So a lot of the interior is riveted together, like riveted supports under the floor to make them more rigid. The dash, the aluminum portion of the dash is actually riveted into the the chassis of the truck. So I'm gonna try and match some of that with the door panels just to kind of tie it all together. So today I'll take you through that process of cutting out these individual parts and actually riveting it together. So the door panels themselves are going to be two layers. One will be an overlay riveted to the main door panel. Rather than just sit here and talk about what I'm doing, I'm going to flip this camera around and kind of take you through and try and describe it and show at the same time. Before we dive into this project too deep, I figured I would bring you out here to the storage side of the shop and show you how I ended up with some of this tooling and materials to do this project. So several years ago, I repowered this truck and ended up putting the cab on a little bit newer chassis, just several upgrades all in one shot. To do that, I needed to do an extended hood, which this chassis was factory extended hood, but the hood that came with it was in really bad shape. So I had these upper hood panels built by a company that specializes in these little window Peterbilts. But I did the hood sides and the air cleaner panels myself, just to save a few bucks. But to do that, I ended up having to buy tooling, buy the correct rivets, all the correct fasteners, and learn how to do this stuff. So, long story short, that's how I ended up with the tooling that we're going to use today to build these door panels. Just thought I would share that and show you my filthy truck. Now to do the Peterbilt hood, I needed maybe 40 or 50 rivets for that project. I ended up buying a box of about 250 rivets. So needless to say, I had some spare stuff laying around after that project was done. Knowing that the majority of the interior panels on this truck were going to be aluminum, I thought it would be cool to utilize those parts and just incorporate it into this truck. But not just as a decorative feature either. I actually want them to be a functioning fastener. For example, you can see that flange there is actually riveted to the floor panel. And then this X pattern of rivets here is actually holding supports on the bottom of the floor to make it more rigid under your feet. Also, the dash here is actually riveted into the chassis. That overlay is kind of to make that big flat panel a little more rigid. You don't get that resonance or vibration, not like you would hear it over this engine anyway, but the theory's the same. That panel there is basically an access panel to get to the steering lines, and the rivets that are in that panel are strictly decorative. So now for the door panels. If a guy was worried about weight, or if this was just strictly an all-out racing machine, you really don't even need door panels in here. Save a couple of pounds. I think that a door panel is needed simply to finish it off at the very minimum. And really, I think, in my opinion, the very minimum would be, say, a 50 thousandths skin on the inside of that door bolted in. That would be good enough. But it's not good enough for this project, I don't think. So what we're gonna do is a 60 thousandths skin, just because I have that material on hand. I think maybe a couple of dimple dyed holes here in the bottom, just to carry over some of the dimple dyed gussets and panels that are on the exterior of the truck. And then maybe something similar, you know, a few triangles with some rivets holding an overlay just in this part here. Again, just to kind of take the resonance out of that big, huge panel. Another option for that, for somebody that's really talented, would be to bead roll something into that panel. I think bead rolling is really good for this application. It's just I don't have enough material on hand to get good at bead rolling, so I'm not going to attempt it on this project. I have just enough material to do what we want to do to finish off the inside of this truck, and I know that I can do an overlay and rivet it and not mess up the material. So that's what we're going to do. Sometimes actually deciding what a guy wants to do can be the hardest part. Certainly can be the most time consuming. I got several hours into actually deciding on what I wanted to do here. I drew up a couple of different options. I kind of liked them both. I hit up Allison and asked her what she liked the best. She chose this one here. So what we've got, dimple dyed holes here. The outer circle's just representing the actual change of material, the roll into the hole there. This is the overlay here, and all of these rivets are what's going to hold that overlay to this main panel here. So to do that, I'm going to have to do two separate pieces of material. Here's the main panel. This is the overlay. You have all of these holes in here, all of these holes in the main panel. All of that stuff has to line up. So now, once I get it drawn up here, I export the pictures, import them into the Carbide Create program. This is where you can edit and convert it into a toolpath, where I send it over to Carbide Motion and run the machine. You're definitely not going to want to watch this in real time. It's going to take a bit, so I will set up the camera, do a little time lapse, then we'll see what we got when they come off the table. Here they are, fresh off the table. This is the driver's side here, all cleaned up. Peel this protective coating off of here and I can rivet these parts together. But before I do that, I think I'm going to use this piece here and use it for a template to drill these perimeter holes where it has to bolt onto the door. I'll do that before I go any farther on assembling these parts. Once the door is drilled, I'm going to use thread inserts so I can actually screw these to the door. Then I'll rivet this part to the main sheet. Then I'll go out and dimple dye these holes to finish it off. So what I did here is I drilled and tapped a hole here and a hole here just to hold that in place, and then I used the same size bit on my cordless drill there as I used in the router table to drill these holes, and just dimpled it. You can see in there, just use it to center up on them holes. So now they're all indicated, they're all marked. I can pull that panel back off and drill all those holes. Now this edge along here is double thickness. There's like a reinforcement piece in the front of this door. So what I'm going to do is drill and tap this whole front row of bolts. They'll just thread directly into the door. The rest of these here, I'll use a knurled thin cert, just so I know it's grabbing into that door good. Okay, I got all these holes drilled out. As you can see, those are pretty big holes for no bigger fastener than I'm going to use in this. As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to use these knurled thin certs. So the way they work, see how it fits in the hole there. And you have this tool, sort of like a manual pop rivet gun. So the thin cert threads onto that mandrel there, and as you squeeze the handle, it pulls the threaded portion back into the flanged portion, making that knurled area here grip onto the sheet metal. Pretty common to see those used for mirrors and accessories, stuff like that. Plenty good enough for this application. By the time I get done with all of these, I believe there's 16 in each door I have to put in. I'm gonna wish I had an air-powered one of some sort. You know, while I'm here, this is a good opportunity to show you guys. You probably noticed in the door panels, there's no provisions for interior door latch mechanism. So what I had done previously is repurpose that lock rod, your door lock rod here. This is actually what opens the door from the inside of the truck. Just push that open, push that down, and door pops open. Guess I should show you that before I put the door panels on. So there's all the thin certs installed. If I can get that to focus there. Yeah, you can see how that thing is crimped onto the door. I decided midway through here, I'm going to change these two here. I'm going to put 1/4 inch inserts in those ones. These are 1032 inserts. I'm going to do 1/4 inch on those two and utilize that a place to bolt a hoop or something to actually close the door from inside the truck. So I'll get those installed and then do the passenger side. There's the panel all bolted up. I got to thinking, you know, maybe not everybody wants to buy thin certs or the tool to install them. Another option would be to use these J-nuts here. So in this case, I could have just slipped them over that flange like so and bolted through to these. Actually, I couldn't because I don't have any in 1032. Smallest I have is 1/4 inch. I could buy some. I just thought I would put that out there in case people were looking for ideas of what they could use. In this case here, you could actually drill the hole in the door a little bit oversized. Then you don't have to be quite as precision on your bolt pattern. Not that this is really precision, but just saying. You could actually slip those J-nuts on there and you could actually adjust your door panel around to fit in the, you know, fit your lines in the recess here. Just thought I'd throw that in there. Here's the passenger side, all drilled and threaded, bolted in place. It even actually fits pretty nice. So now we can go over here and talk about rivets and how that system works. I'll try not to get too deep into this. The information I'm going to share here is going to be pretty basic. You know, it's like anything else in life. There's a direct correlation between acceptable tolerance and your application. So if you're looking at this and thinking about building some door panels for your rat rod, or maybe trying your hand at building a bomber seat, the information I share here will probably get you in the ballpark. On the other hand, if you're thinking about ordering the tools and the materials to build yourself an airplane next weekend, you're probably going to want to dig into this a little deeper. There are tons of videos on YouTube about this. This is basically how I learned to do it. And this is where I learned the basic information that I use. Now, with that said, if you've happened across this channel and halfway interested in what I'm doing here, you've probably already used one of these. This is just a pop rivet. You have the rivet itself, the mandrel. You have a tool that grabs that mandrel and draws it through this rivet, bulging this side, basically clamping your two pieces of material together. The rivets that I'm talking about today, in a sense, in short, you're basically just smashing this rivet. This is what they call a buck rivet or a solid rivet. So you're just smashing this rivet. Instead of drawing a mandrel through it, you're just smashing the back side of it. Obviously, you're going to need access to both sides of the rivet. Now, this is what they refer to as a brazier rivet, or a brazier head rivet. I believe I'm pronouncing that right. There's multiple styles or heads of rivets. For example, this is a countersunk flush mount rivet. So you'd end up with a flush surface with this one. So the head of your rivet is going to determine what rivet setter you need. This rivet setter here is specific to the brazier head rivet. As you can see, has the same profile, fits very nicely. So that's what's going to hammer on your rivet. On the back side, you have what they call a bucking bar. You're going to hold that up against the rivet and just rattle it together. It's going to flare or mash the back side of this, and that's what they call your shop head or bucktail. There's actually a specific diameter and thickness that you want to end up with on this when you're all done. Again, the basics of it, the diameter of your bucktail, you want 1.5 times the shank diameter. So this is a 3/16 shank. When it's mashed down, you're going to want approximately a 1/4 inch diameter. Maybe a touch more, maybe a touch less, give or take. The thickness of your bucktail. So when it's mashed down flat, how thick that mushroomed end is, you want half the diameter. 3/16 rivet, half of 3/16 is 3/32. So you're going to want that thing between a 16th and an 16th and an eighth of an inch. So there you go. That's the basics of this part. Your material thickness, what you're shooting for on your bucktail is what's going to determine how long a rivet you start with. This right here is a 5/16 length rivet. These are 3/8. Now what I'm doing is I am riveting two pieces of 1/16 inch thick material. So the overall thickness of my material is going to be 1/8 of an inch. So you take this 5/16 rivet minus 1/8 of an inch, that's going to leave you 3/16 of an inch to work with. By the time I buck that rivet, smash it down to where it's between, an 1/8 of an inch, 1/16 to an 1/18 of an inch, it should end up at roughly 1/4 of an inch diameter. Now I'm sure 10 years from now, somebody's going to run across this video right after they graduate helicopter mechanic school and point out something that I'm not bringing up or mentioning, or something that I'm doing wrong. But I bet in 10 years from now, my door panels are still riveted together. And that's all I really care about. So that's it. All right, I've got these two pieces cleaned up, plastic strip back on them. I'm using these Clecos to hold the overlay onto the main sheet here, but you don't want to use these to actually center your holes. They clamp and hold fine, but they don't do anything for alignment or holding anything in place as far as the holes actually being in line with each other. That's why I've got this whole row of rivets just pushed in place to make sure everything is in alignment where I need it. I'll go ahead and buck a few of those and bring it back. I'll pick out the best looking one to show you. Before I hammer these rivets down, I should point out this is not a riveting gun. They make a specific air hammer, air riveting gun for doing this job. I don't know what's so special about it. I believe it probably has a little more throttle control and maybe better to regulate, easier to regulate. I don't know, I've never owned one, never used one. This is a 20-year-old Harbor Freight air hammer. I have an air pressure regulator on the other end of the hose set to about 40 PSI. So I'm gonna use that. This is what I've always used. Seems to do an okay job. I'm gonna go ahead and rattle a few of these down. Don't worry so much about watching the backside. Get your bucking bar on the back of the rivet. Pay attention to keeping the setting tool on the head of the rivet square. That's all you got to worry about. Don't smiley face your rivet. Hammer it a couple times, take a look. If it needs more, give it more. If it needs less, back off a notch on the next one. Let's see how this row turned out. Get you focused in here on the best one, right? Looks like about pretty close to a 1/16 of an inch. Pretty close to 1/4 inch diameter. That one you can see I went a bit far. It's a little under 1/16 of an inch and a little bit bigger than 1/4 inch diameter. That was my test one, setting the regulator when you guys weren't looking. Other than that though, consistency wise, they look pretty good. There are my dirty fingerprints all over everything. Go put some mittens on and finish this panel off. And there's the passenger side, all riveted together. Still pretty wild to me that you're hammering on this side of the rivet and all it does is just shine them up a little bit. And the side that nobody sees. I did have this one get a little crazy on me. That's what happens when your bucking bar walks off the side of it. Would still rather pay attention to the top side myself. Next step for this one is to dimple die those holes. I think I'll do that next. Then I'll worry about finishing up the driver's side. Well, as you saw in the video, I couldn't reach all of the holes in the press with the dimple die. So I had to resort to using the impact and a puller bolt. I guess I'm really lucky that I chose the diameter of the one dimple die that it has a through hole in it. Lucky day. Clean this thing up and I can move on to the driver's side. Well, those are going to kind of suck to wash, but they'll look good when they're clean. I drilled these two holes out for 1/4 inch so I can put my hoop in there so I have a way to close this door. All in all, I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. Both sides are done. Guess I'll figure out what to work on next. After going back and reviewing the footage that I already have this week, I decided I'm going to go ahead and call that good for this video. I'm going to be doing really good to cut this one down to less than 30 minutes. So there you go. That's how you build some aluminum door panels, or at least how I do it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Have a good one.